I'm Levi, and I'd like to share the story of the first and last time I served as a bridesmaid. Once upon a time, I had a close friendship with a girl named Natalie. We were inseparable, sharing everything, even going on double dates together. Our bond was incredibly strong. It all changed when Natalie started dating Owen, a man of substantial wealth, the kind of rich that most people can only dream of. Meanwhile, I'm a translator, so my financial situation wasn't as comfortable. While I loved Natalie and Owen dearly, I couldn't afford the upscale restaurants and expensive bars they frequented. Natalie insisted that Owen didn't mind covering my expenses, but I felt uncomfortable with my friend's boyfriend spending money on me. As a result, Natalie and I naturally started spending less time together. One day, I logged into my Facebook account and discovered that Natalie and Owen had become engaged. I left a comment offering my congratulations and almost immediately received a private message from Natalie. In it, she asked me to be one of her bridesmaids. I found it a bit unusual. Why couldn't she have simply called and asked? Nevertheless, I agreed because after all, she was my best friend. Natalie informed me that she was arranging a dinner outing for all her bridesmaids the following night. I was genuinely excited, looking forward to planning her bridal shower and discussing all the maid of honor responsibilities. However, as I entered the restaurant, I couldn't believe my eyes. Nova, my high school enemy, was seated next to Natalie wearing a big, smug grin. I used to be friends with Nova until she began spreading malicious rumors about me. In fact, her actions had forced me to switch schools. Yet, to my shock, Natalie revealed that Nova was going to be her maid of honor. I pulled Natalie aside, urging her not to involve Nova in the wedding, emphasizing that she was a terrible person. However, my pleas fell on deaf ears. I contemplated leaving the restaurant and opting out of the wedding altogether. In retrospect, that might have been the better choice, but instead, I put on a fake smile and pretended to be thrilled. There were 6 of us bridesmaids, but Nova was the only one I knew. Upon my return to the table, Nova greeted me with a disingenuous smile and gestured for me to sit next to her. I obliged, and she offered me a piece of cake. I took a bite, only to discover it was excessively crunchy. I hastily spat it out, horrified to find a cockroach in my cake. Disgusting. Nova burst into laughter, finding it utterly hilarious. I strongly suspected she'd have placed the cockroach there intentionally, but I chose not to create a scene and ruin Natalie's day. 2 days later, while I was at work, my boss summoned me for a meeting. She expressed concerns about the quality of my work, citing some complaints she had received, and regretfully informed me that I was being let go. I was stunned. Desperate to understand the source of these complaints, I asked her for the names, but she refused to disclose them, stating that the decision was final. Deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Nova had a hand in this. It was reminiscent of how she used to behave when we worked together. Frustrated and angry, I took to our WhatsApp group to accuse Nova of being behind my termination. Predictably, she denied any involvement, but I'd asserted that her actions were rooted in jealousy, and this was her way of exacting revenge. Natalie intervened, urging me to cease the conflict. She emphasized that Nova had been a supportive friend in recent years and wished to avoid discord among her bridesmaids. Natalie made it clear that if I couldn't get along with Nova, I'd be excluded from the wedding. The prospect of missing Natalie's wedding was heart-wrenching, so I reluctantly offered an apology to Nova, despite my reservations. When we met at the dress shop, Nova greeted me with a warm hug and kissed me on both cheeks, forgiving me for our prior clash. She remarked, "I understand you were upset about losing your job. You must be worried about how you'll afford your bridesmaid's dress, trying to maintain a facade of financial stability." I responded, "I'll manage. I've set aside some savings." It was a blatant falsehood. I had no savings to speak of. I simply didn't want Nova to perceive my financial worries. In response, Nova reassured me, saying, "Don't worry." I had already chosen the perfect dress. As we entered the store, the saleswoman kindly offered us champagne, which I hastily consumed, seeking some solace in the bubbly to cope with Nova's presence. Soon, the saleswoman presented Nova's chosen dress, and I was taken aback by its sheer beauty. It exuded elegance, a lovely light green, off-the-shoulder gown. The saleswoman informed us that she had dresses available in all our sizes and we should try them on. However, when I received mine, it was visibly too large. The saleswoman expressed her apologies, explaining that she had ordered the sizes Nova had provided. Despite this setback, I decided to try it on, and with some expert pinning, they managed to show me how it would look after necessary alterations. The result was stunning. Nova indeed had impeccable taste. However, when I glimpsed at the price tag, $3,000, I was overcome with dismay. There was simply no way I could afford such a sum. In front of the other bridesmaids, I kept my concerns to myself. Yet later, I mustered the courage to call Natalie and explain that I couldn't afford the dress Nova had chosen. I suggested finding something in a similar color that was more budget-friendly. To my surprise, Natalie's response was far from understanding. She erupted in anger, accusing me of trying to sabotage her wedding and questioned my loyalty as a friend, insisting that I should find a way to pay for the dress. Frustrated by her reaction, I abruptly ended the call. If this was the way she intended to treat me, I was ready to forego being part of her wedding. Soon after, Nova reached out to me. She conveyed that Natalie was genuinely upset, but still wanted me to be a bridesmaid. Nova offered to pay for my dress, and despite the uncomfortable situation, I felt compelled to accept her generosity. My affection for Natalie still lingered, and if it meant securing a designer dress without expense, I reasoned that I could endure Nova's presence. However, what followed became increasingly unbearable. Nova took charge of the wedding preparations and incessantly bombarded the WhatsApp group with tasks, invariably designating me as the one responsible for completing them. Her rationale was that, as I didn't have a job, I had the time to handle these responsibilities. Fearing I owed her for the dress, I reluctantly took on these duties. To my dismay, Natalie began to laud Nova's contributions, attributing the wedding's success to her, even though it was I who was doing the majority of the work. Fed up with this unjust situation, I decided it was time to take action against Nova. My plan was to orchestrate an act of revenge during the bachelorette party she had organized for Natalie. I offered to provide the entertainment, and while I did indeed book a performer, it wasn't just any entertainer, it was Nova's ex-boyfriend, Evan. As Evan entered the room, I closely observed Nova's reaction, witnessing the pain in her eyes. My satisfaction grew as Evan sang and danced for Natalie, showering her with flirtation and affection. He even planted a kiss on her cheek. Unbeknownst to Natalie, Evan was Nova's former flame, so she simply enjoyed the show without suspecting anything amiss. However, Nova's heartache became apparent as she burst into tears and fled the scene. Natalie, engrossed in the festivities, remained oblivious to Nova's distress. Moved by guilt, I decided to console Nova and found her outside, weeping. Maintaining the pretense of ignorance about Evan's identity, I inquired about her tears, prompting her to reveal that their breakup had been tumultuous, spurred by her insistence that Evan secure a more serious job. Despite their separation, she still harbored deep feelings for him, making the sight of him with Natalie all the more agonizing. Having exacted my revenge, I felt it was time to end the charade. I approached Nova and informed her that I would arrange for Evan to leave the party. However, as we re-entered the venue, Evan spotted us and approached Nova. He expressed his regret for taking the job without knowing she would be there and professed his enduring love for her. Within moments, I witnessed them sharing a passionate kiss in front of the entire gathering, a sight that left me thoroughly disgusted. The wedding, scheduled for a few weeks later, couldn't come soon enough for me. We were expected to assemble at Natalie's early to prepare for the event, but Nova failed to make an appearance. Natalie grew increasingly stressed as we waited for Nova's arrival, yet there was no sign of her. My phone incessantly received messages from Evan, Nova's ex, who was frantic because he couldn't locate her as he was supposed to be her date for the day. I decided to hang up on Evan as I lacked the patience to handle Nova's unexplained disappearance. I shifted my focus to assisting Natalie with her preparations, and we barely managed to arrive on time. I sent a text to Owen to confirm their readiness to begin the wedding ceremony, and he responded affirmatively, prompting me to signal the start. As I walked down the aisle with the best man, Natalie followed behind with her father. However, what ensued was a horrifying spectacle. Piercing screams echoed through the church as Natalie began to jump up and down, and to my shock, something slimy slithered out from under her wedding dress, a large yellow snake. Panic erupted among the wedding guests, with everyone screaming and fleeing in fear. I couldn't help but suspect Nova's involvement. Searching for answers, I scanned the scene and noticed that Owen was conspicuously absent from his position next to the priest. Where had he gone? Just when I thought things would be okay, it all fell apart. Upon seeing Owen's absence, Natalie burst into tears and left the altar, enduring what must have been the most humiliating moment of her life. The entire congregation erupted into a cacophony of chatter, adding to the chaos and confusion. Natalie's father was visibly furious, and I urgently attempted to reach Owen to determine his whereabouts, but he remained unresponsive. I inquired with the best man, who informed me that the last contact he had with Owen was a text from Natalie, indicating she had a surprise for him in her hotel room. With a sense of urgency, I hurried to the hotel and requested Natalie's room key from the receptionist, explaining that it was a matter of utmost importance. Despite some resistance and argument, the receptionist finally yielded and arranged for someone to accompany me to the room. Upon entering, I discovered Owen fast asleep at the bed, and the room emitted an unpleasant odor. I resorted to slapping him awake, finding him in a severely hungover state. I began to interrogate him about the situation, and after a brief silence, he confessed, "I think I slept with Nova." Horrified, I delivered another slap and demanded that he pull himself together. Unexpectedly, Nova emerged from the hotel bathroom and spitefully uttered, "Tell Natalie this is what she gets for marrying my ex." My shock knew no bounds. The ensuing events were marked by intense drama between Natalie and Owen. Fortunately, it transpired that Owen hadn't actually engaged in any intimate encounter with Nova. Rather, she had deceived him and orchestrated the situation to disrupt Natalie's wedding. Natalie remained completely unaware of the underlying turmoil between Owen and Nova. Unbeknownst to her, Nova's insistence on being a bridesmaid was driven by a sinister agenda to sabotage her wedding day.